Dream in Black comes out of the legacy of wanting to empower and make powerful women of color, poor women, immigrant women, and also to center the visions that we have for what is possible.
The vision was to create a space for Black domestic workers.
We Dream in Black is a sisterhood of collective women for the same cause that is absolutely passionate about what they do.
I am a nanny.
I am a CNA, a certified nursing assistant.
I'm a domestic worker.
I am a home health care worker.
My occupation is home caregiver. I'm also an activist.
We have a chapter in Atlanta, Georgia, Durham, North Carolina. We have a chapter in New York City, and we're expanding. We have affiliate members that are a part of We Dream in Black in Miami, Florida, in Boston, Massachusetts, in Seattle, Washington.
Black women have always been kind of my North Star for organizing.
Our worker leaders are in the bus stations, organizing in the workplace.
It's important that we are organizing under We Dream in Black because it gives us an identity. We could have identity, and so that we can stand and feel good that we have people that backing us.
Domestic work is work that takes place in the home, in the privacy of the home. It's associated with women's unpaid labor in the home. And so because of that, it's a kind of invisible work.
As a CNA worker, a domestic worker, nannies, we go through so much, but we just want our voices to be heard and we want people to understand who we are and what we represent.
Domestic workers are mandatory for growth in a community or society, and we deserve to be recognized.
The work that National Domestic Workers Alliance, and specifically the We Dream in Black program, is doing is really talking about landing all of the ways that domestic work is still very tied into this kind of anti-Blackness, and specifically this really misogynized anti-Blackness, what some folks term misogynoir, and all the ways that that functions and all the ways that it intersects with economics. It's important in us understanding domestic work for us to understand where Black women still sit inside of that.
This kind of goes back to the slavery days, how the woman slave, she took care of the household basically. We are the backbone to focus on African American women. Someone sees us and seeing what we've done and where we're going, and they're liking that and they want to see us go further.
The occupation of domestic work in this country has been historically racialized, and for Black women in particular, there are overtones of the history of slavery and the history of racism. Domestic work as an occupation has been marginalized. It's been unrecognized in many ways. It's been unrecognized in law. Domestic workers were not granted the same labor protections that other workers were granted.
Domestic workers have a history of direct action, and that story doesn't get told. In the 1880s was one of the first strikes in the country, and that was in Atlanta when Black women decided that they were going to raise the wage by going on strike.
The ways in which they organized actually were transformative. Black domestic worker organizing continued into the 1930s in New York around the domestic worker marketplaces.
Back in the 1930s, they didn't have access to minimum wage laws. They didn't have access to Social Security. What I found in my research is that Black women in the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s were asserting their rights as domestic workers, and they were saying, we have a right to minimum wage, we have a right to dignity, we are professionals, we deserve to be treated as professionals.
Domestic workers really started to step up into leadership positions, and one of those folks was Dorothy Bolden, who holds a really special place for us. She formed the National Domestic Workers Union of America, and so it wasn't until this intensive organizing efforts that were happening in the 60s and 70s and into the early 80s that domestic workers were included in the Fair Labor Standards Act, meaning that they were eligible for overtime pay and for even minimum wage.
We have been really intentional about centering and amplifying and making visible the legacy of Black women in this industry. But we don't want to stop at the history. We want to carry history forward and make sure that Black women in the caregiving industry have the tools that they need to be able to lead an initiative to reshape what this country looks like and how it functions.
Black women are increasingly a major force in the workforce. 6 out of every 10 Black women is in the workforce, but yet are experiencing poverty at the highest rates of any group outside of Native American women. Black women are the breadwinners for their families and are ultimately the primary caregivers, but also facing insecurity. Black women experience intimate partner violence. So over and over you see Black women are these frontlines communities.
What we know about domestic workers is that they're immigrants. They're mothers, they're women of color. Some are young, some are middle-aged, some are older. There's a range of experiences that domestic workers sit right at the intersection of.
A lot of the interventions that we do, a lot of the organizing that we have to do has to be on local levels and has to be through the power that we instill with our workforce and really reaching out to workers and building a really strong movement on the ground to be able to affect change.
People are always going to need someone at home. We don't want to go under the radar. We're all in this together. We love what we do, but let's make it work for us and them.
Right now, one of our biggest campaigns is to have a living wage for domestic workers. What does being able to pay your rent or mortgage, to feed your family, and to not just barely be getting by look like per hour to you? To actually pledge on not taking below whatever the wage is.
A lot needs to be changed. We need benefits. We need healthcare plans. We need childcare. It's baffling.
One thing that we're working on with our design team nationally is a set of materials that lay out all of the rights for domestic workers. We're also in partnership with other agencies to come in and do workshops with our members about what their rights are, what they're entitled to, and how to go about filing a complaint.
It's a great organization. I really learned a lot, and it taught me my rights as a woman, as a CNA, and a domestic worker.
The other thing that we do really well is leadership development. We are building their actual skills so they can be better in their careers, really to establish it as a sector. The other ways that we train is we train our member leaders who are awesome and amazing to be able to facilitate, to lead campaigns, to be able to speak about what they're going through, to do media, etc. So that folks are feeling empowered and have the skills to address their core issues and change them.
I'm hoping in the end I can be a chapter leader and move this forward and fight for women to be empowered and informed and involved.
We also talk to our members about how they have all these skills and all this knowledge and experience that's really useful, and how can we help you put that in a form that's transferable.
Ever since I became an organizer, it's pushed me to want to do more. It's like a whole big family and we all work together.
Success looks like one Bill of Rights and equaling a living wage for domestic workers.
I'm fighting for myself and all the other domestic workers.
I am fighting for equal justice, equal pay, morality, respect, love, compassion. That's what I'm fighting for.
I'm also fighting for respect, making sure that we are respected in every aspect, whether it's being a nanny, a housekeeper, a caregiver, just making sure that everyone knows who we are, what we're there for, and what we do.
Really what I'm fighting for is the kids, and I'm fighting for the backbone of the caretaker watching these kids.
I am fighting for the African community worldwide.
These women are strategists at heart. We want to create a space where all workers feel like they're a part of this movement and that wins are inevitable for us.
So that's the story of We Dream in Black.